I'm A Gilchrist, as Elaine said. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the Point Loma Library, the friends of the library, the staff of the library, and to Elaine for what she does. Quick content note before I start. I'll be speaking about some sensitive issues, some religious trauma, family abuse, cult, drugs and alcohol use and abuse, and homelessness. So take care of yourself. If you need to step out at any time, don't be ashamed. In fact, I might step out in the middle of the speech. So Kat was here when I ran through and I broke up the entire thing. So this is my second time performing it live. Forgive me if I get emotional. So my memoir, The Truth About Demons, tracks a childhood shaped by a demon-obsessed mother, an end times cult, which kind of led to an early adulthood full of drugs, alcohol, and homelessness, and believe it or not, even the mob. But it's also about how books, chosen family, and kindness got me through, as well as the library, as Elaine said. So a little bit about me. Well, that's kind of silly. This whole thing is kind of about me, isn't it? But tonight I'd like to share with you why I wrote the memoir and do a few select readings from the memoir, if that's okay. And definitely we'll talk a little bit about my process, if anybody's thinking about writing their own story. And then I'd also like to finish up a piece I wrote just for tonight. It'll be my honor to sign and provide you all with copies this evening. Should we drive in?
Definitely.
Okay, let's do it. There we go. So, I was born and raised in the East Coast, and I guess you can tell by the picture that I was destined to be an author, judging by the stylish ensemble, and full mustache at age 6, I might add. And yes, I was very tall for my age. In fact, people would often mistake me for being 4 or 5 years older than I really was, which made for some interesting times. I currently reside right here in Point Loma with my partner Amy, and Amy, thank you for the cookies. As Elaine mentioned, I've done a lot of things in my life since the events of the book. I have been a DJ, a photographer, a salesperson, owned and operated an art gallery, but currently I'm an engineer and an author. I wrote The Truth About Demons for anyone who's heard or is hearing what I call the murmur. Now, if you've never heard the murmur, good on you. But I think a lot of folks have heard it at some point in their life. Murmur is a word I've used since childhood, and it describes that internal voicing that we hear. You're not enough. You're worthless. You can't do it. Don't even bother. I also wrote to make childhood homelessness a little bit more evident. And we're going to get a little deep into that tonight. And speaking of that, we often think of homelessness in the terms of the nightmare that we see on the streets of our very own city. The dirty, drug-addicted, wild-looking person with obvious mental distress. But as I'm sure you know, the truth is there is an unseen mass of souls, homeless folks, experiencing homelessness that are not visible to our eye. This is what homelessness can look like. I was 18. I didn't have a place to sleep. I had a bag of clothes and a motorcycle that broke down. I had $14 for gas. That's it. That's what I had. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Every superhero, and indeed every villain, has an origin story. So I'd like to give you a little of mine. Fade in, 1970s, Levittown, Pennsylvania, post-World War II city. You may have heard of the Levittown builder. In the city of Levittown, most known for its race riots in the late 60s. So a very welcoming place. But aside from that, it looks idyllic, doesn't it? Well, the suburbs lie. A never-home, stoic, frustrated artist, steelworker of a father, stay-at-home mother suffering from generational abuse, tortured by the unseen, occult pressure that limited thinking itself and made the world very small. Real neighborhood danger from real predators, mixed with the chaotic freedom of the era, and it was free. Bikes without helmets, running with scissors, outside until the street lights came on, disappearing for hours by the creek and in the woods. No cell phones, no influencers, learning lessons the old-fashioned way through pain. For the non-boomers, the Gen Xers in the room, and I said that in advance of tonight, but we probably, well, I don't know, there's several generations here. Let me frame up what childhood is like for folks my age with a nursery rhyme. Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. And down will come cradle, baby and all. Think about that for a second. This is a story about a cradle with the baby put on top of a tree, and a wind came along and knocked the baby off of the tree. And they sung this to us right before bedtime. And don't get me started about ring around the rosy, pocket full of posy. You know that line means carrying small bouquets of flowers in your pocket to cover up the stench from the great plague that was occurring in London. Yeah, we all fall down indeed. So the old motto was, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Not always. Sometimes it leaves a scar. Within the modest walls of our Levittown home, there was pain and control and abuse and mental illness. But outside of the house was freedom. Now I had a favorite place, a place where freedom and adventure came in volumes. The Bucks County Free Library in Levittown, PA. The library was my lifeline and my lungs. It gave me oxygen, time, permission, peace. Above all, it gave me the oldest, best treasure of humankind, story. I have to take a drink, pardon me. The library's well-worn books were a treasure trove passed down by those who had gone before me. Their stories gave me knowledge, strength, bravery, hope. When things got too bad at home, I rode as fast as my long legs would take me to the library. I'd stroll the musty rows and I'd grab a book. Losing myself in story, I realized, you know what? I can borrow courage from the stories. From the heroes of those stories, I learned real life lessons from both mythical and real characters. I was lifted up by the events survived, the chances, the rebirths. And my favorite little desk of refuge, with the aid of the kind librarians, I charted my own growth away from the dysfunction that was roiling at home. I don't have to tell half of this audience, maybe all this audience, that today libraries are asked to do so much more with little to nothing. That's not right. Budgets are slashed, books are challenged, banned. Despite that, buildings like this are still where communities practice being community. Where minds expand, where adventures are lived, where the unfortunate take refuge, where peace is found, and oh, by the way, where homework is done. Sanctuaries help, but storms still storm. Here's what my descent looked like. Because my mind and soul objected to the teachings of the cult, my mother, at the instance of the cult leaders, threw me onto the street. As I mentioned before, I had a bag of clothes and occasionally worked a motorcycle. Cumulatively, I spent a year or so homeless, 2 more years in what I consider an underhoused state. Underhoused meaning, I slept where I could, when I could. I met many a soul in my time in the street. The person that left the deepest impact on me was Boo Boo. Now, Boo Boo was a veteran. He was African American, and he was a hulk of a man. He was taller than I was, and he had a big dent on his head. And he had a terrifying resting face. Do y'all know what a resting face is? Yeah, a resting face is that the expression your face makes when you don't have an expression, when you're just neutral. Mine, people are always coming up to me and asking me, what's wrong? It's continual. What's wrong? Nothing? Well, Boo Boo's was terrifying. His natural resting face, you wanted to be on the other side of the street. Not because he was African American, because you were just scared. And the crazy thing was, every time he saw me, his expression turned joyous, almost angelic. And when he spoke, a high-pitched voice like Boo Boo from the Yogi Bear cartoon came out, which was shocking to everyone. He showed me the ropes of the street, the safe spots, and the way. Experiencing homelessness is only a small part of my life, but readers often comment on the impact they felt from reading the chapters, where I shared some details with them. I'd like to read an excerpt from the chapter titled Cardboard. This chapter was performed live on stage by actor John Carroll at the International Memoir Showcase last year. Was it last year? Mm-hmm. And this is the one where I usually lose it, so brace up. wish I was still drinking vodka sometimes. Oops. Sorry. Boo Boo led me to a freeway on-ramp. He pushed me closer to the light. "This here is a sweet spot," Boo Boo said. "You take it." He went back a few car lengths. The cardboard sign I made must have transmuted into a new heavier element, or maybe the gravity of the earth had quadrupled while we walked over. Despite its weight, I held the sign, hiding my face behind it. The dirt kicked up by tires joined with a gray exhaust, and I pretended it was the reason for the tears in my eyes. I allowed myself that one last self-delusion. An older man in a freshly washed luxury sedan shook his head at me and mouthed, "You people." A 20-something girl looked at me in horror through her closed car window and turned up the radio. An older man in the passenger side of a van waved me over, gave me $1 and a half-eaten McDonald's hash brown. "God bless," he said. A middle-aged guy in a white utility truck yelled, "Get an effing job, bum!" 20-something guy with long hair and a beat-up car handed me $3 and said, "Here you go, brother." A little girl in the backseat of a BMW asked her mother, "Why is that man there?" The window motor engaged, and before the windows finished rolling up, I heard the mother say, "Don't look at him, honey." The little girl smiled and waved. An uncountable number of uncomfortable people locked their gaze forward, and either by choice, lack of awareness, or because of the callous that builds up on a soul, seeing daily suffering did nothing. Now, I don't blame them. Really, I didn't. I was guilty of the same throughout the years. I'd look the other way, gone stone-faced, pretended not to see, not to feel. You see, to do otherwise would have allowed in the possibility that could happen to anyone, and that was unthinkable. That thought had to be kept at bay at all costs, even if the cost was as high as refusing to acknowledge a soul in need. You see, for some folks, it eases their conscience to blame the unfortunate for their lot in life, to believe people on the street are there because of choices they've made. Now, I've met people on the street who said it was their choice, but it's not the choice you might think. It's not the choice between a beautiful house in the suburbs and being homeless. They chose the street over living with an abuser, or being raped, or beaten, or having their few possessions stolen at a shelter. The majority didn't have the capacity to care for themselves, having been turned out from a mental health facility or tossed onto the street after a hospital stay. I wonder if I'd ever driven past Boo Boo and pretended not to see him. Had I contributed to making him feel invisible? Not him, surely I did it to someone. On the street, how long does it take before everything you are fades away like car exhaust? Thank you. As part of the promise I made to myself, and in honor of those people that I met on the street, I'd like to share some statistics with you, if that's okay. Thank you. So, I share these because we don't often see them all collected in one place. It's difficult to self-educate, but in 2022, the greatest one-night national unhoused number was 771,480 souls. I don't know if you ever heard that number before. I sure hadn't. In 21-22 school year, 1.2 million people, children, experienced homelessness at some point. That included those in shelters, cars, or living with friends. Now that's the actual count, but there's folks that do estimates that are different than the count because a lot of folks don't admit to it. And based upon the estimates that they've done, 4.2 million children experience homelessness every year. Right now, as I'm speaking, you lovely folks are here, 1,500 homeless kids are in San Diego. Some are in shelters, some are not. Folks that count these things again say that that is underestimated by multiples, maybe a multiple of 10. Especially in the new current situation where if you're brown and you're not from here, you're not going to go on the list. In our busy lives, it's really tough to self-educate in this stuff, and I get it. I share these stats because I think before we can fix it, we have to understand and honestly look at the scale and scope of the issue. It's probably the engineer in me, but I think we have to know the details first before we can solve. And speaking of details, if you'd like to have my sources, speak with me after, and I'll email you with a list of my sources for these numbers. Excuse me. Now, I don't have the answer to reduce these numbers. The causes are complex, the story is individual, the reasons why people hit homelessness or experience homelessness are varied. Almost as varied as the number of people. But here's what I do know. I've been out there, and I know what we're doing is not guided by full reality. In all of its best efforts to help, it's missing. It's missing the mark. We're not fully considering all of the issues. We're not trying to consider how we address all the causes. In fact, I think we're wasting valuable taxpayer resources. And I think we're wasting the time of those people without a home. By caring for your health, a mixture of prevention and treatment, I believe, is the key. And with that, I'll step off my soapbox, but I reserve the right to jump back on at any time. And thank you for your patience. This isn't an easy subject. This certainly isn't a lightweight subject. So another question I get is, why did I name my memoir The Truth About Demons? And I'd like to show you right now why. It's because of that guy. No, that's the wrong slide. Hang on. It's that guy. No, again, the wrong slide. I'll get it. There he is, on the left. You probably can't see it, but it's there. Trust me, it's there. What happens when you mix money, lots of it, drugs, alcohol, with unresolved generational abuse, and mix it with religious trauma and shake it all up in a shaker? Escaping homelessness, I took a job in the mob-controlled nightclub world that gave me access to all the hedonistic pleasures a young man, 23, could possibly want. Oh no, what could possibly go wrong? So I went from having nothing to having too much. And my demons came along for the limo ride. No matter how many cocaine and vodka blankets I threw over them, the demons of despair, hopelessness, and worthlessness never weakened. In fact, they got stronger. And as they got stronger, I just got arrogant. It came to a head one night after an array of events led me to a near-death experience from too much of everything. This is from the chapter entitled Armageddon. The point of gray expanded into a fuzzy view of my bedroom ceiling. I lay rigid, not breathing. I tried to sit up. It felt like someone was sitting on my chest, a big someone. Was my heart even beating? Pain exploded in my chest, and my heart spun like it had been jumped with old car batteries wired to my innards by rusty cables. I sucked air like a breaching whale. I lay still until my heart returned to a regular rhythm. I considered calling an ambulance, but I didn't. F it, I thought. If I die, I die. Lying on the bedroom floor, I looked inward for the first time in years. I pulled aside the mask of ego I had donned. Layer by paper mache layer I went, allowing each one to deconstruct and float away like an escaped kite. I saw it. It was swirling in the mirror black pool where it lived for years, swimming, feeding, growing. I saw it as clearly as my father saw the moms many years ago while sitting on a mid-century couch in a Levittown living room. All this time I was wrong. Demons do exist. Now, not the kind my mom thought she saw and heard. The kind of demon that rides your back your entire life, wrapping its scaled hands around your neck, whispering in your ear, stopping you from breaking through or rising above, choking away remembrances of who you were, eating any seeds of becoming before they took root. Demons do exist, and mine had a name. Its name was fear. It was born of pain and insecurities gifted to me by my mother, passed down by the callous hearts, harsh words, and striking hands of her mother's mother, and so on, through generations of abuse. My demon, fed from the early loss of protector father, had sprung its razor-sharp talons and sunk them in my guts. It thrived, feasting on the fears instilled by a doomsday cult, painted over by lies, fake smiles, false hopes, and self-righteous judgments. It grew fat, drinking from a fire hose of insecurities, brewed by losing home, friends, family, future. My twin fears of rejection and abandonment gave it armor like liquid steel. I was not free from blame. Oh no, it was my spawn, and I fed it aplenty while denying its very existence. Instead of facing it, I put on a shine of bravery, bravado, boastfulness. I buried it under reams of denial and pages of hedonistic pursuit. I wrote it off as no thing, giving it cover and room to grow. I allowed it to hide in the library of me, at times foolishly borrowing against its strength. Emergence was imminent. A few more feedings and the person I wanted to be would be gone forever. Like a candle burning its last wax, my light was sputtering, throwing ash to the sky, like the last offering on an altar to an uncaring God. Thanks. So, after that night, where I don't know if I died or not, medically, maybe I didn't, spiritually, I probably did, I resolved to make changes, not just to my situation, but to my core. It took a while. Certainly wasn't a straight line. It often isn't. I found that boy, and one by one I cut the strings that were holding him in that pit. Now, the demons are still there, but they're old and tired, like me. And I think they've lost their power. And don't get me wrong, every so often when things are going really, really well, they show up and they start talking. They talk loud. But here's the cool thing. I can shush them and they shut up now. Taking a while, but now they do. You know, the truth about demons for me is that the demons are me. And I control them. So, what next? What now? What do we do with the life we survived? Well, I decided to turn my chaos into a compass. And that's where Memoir came in. As I gained some distance between those early events and my adulthood, I felt some push to share my story in some fashion. Like my father before me, I am a frustrated artist. And what do I mean by that? I mean, unfortunately, I've got to try to generate wealth as opposed to just generating art. If given a choice, that's all I do. But you know what? The mortgage and the food bills, they don't care about that at all. And I've talked to them, but they just don't care. So through the years, I've explored a lot of ways to share my story. Painting, film, believe it or not, comedy, monologue, but memoir has always been brewing in the back of my head. So about 4 years ago, I started writing it seriously. I started by typing out an overly long, confusing, navel-gazing version of the first chapter. It was awful. Just ask anybody I sent it to, and they'll go, yeah, it was terrible. You know when your friends say, it was nice, you know you're in trouble, right? That old adage, if you don't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. A lot of people were very silent about that first chapter. And that's good though, because obviously I needed guidance. I had been writing since I was 5 and I could hold a crayon, but I had never written something of this depth, of this importance to myself. So to the library I went. Actually to Amazon a lot of times, but to the library too. And 40 books later, I thought I was ready to start again, so I did. So started over. The first manuscript came together in about a year. To write the truth about demons, I alternated between 2 gears. The first gear was scene. What happened? What is the story? Second gear is reflection. How did it feel about that? How did it move me forward, or in some cases, how did it move me backward? The voice in the book had to be honest and humane, a mix of reflective, funny, and when possible, inspiring. But most of all, it had to be 100% me, because I can't be any other way. Sorry. Sorry, Amy. Ethically, I wanted to protect privacy. I wanted to fact check. It had to be true. Telling the truth was a big priority, so I spent countless hours stirring memory, calling old friends to check my memory of events. Some people were surprised to hear from me. Some people were not very happy to hear from me, as you can imagine. It's interesting when you call someone and say you're writing a memoir and they might be in it, the reactions you get. But I protected them. Everyone's life contains a story we're sharing. All of us in this room have some element of our story that someone else could benefit from or would like to read. So if you're thinking of, or you're writing your story, or just interested, here's some tips that I might share with you that worked for me. Number 1, find the story within your life. It could be an hour, a day, a week, month, 50 years, it doesn't matter. Your story is in your life somewhere, and it can be spread out over part or all of it. And to find it, what I found helpful is I researched my own life. I looked at my life from a distance, and I analyzed it, and I researched it. And I did that practically by calling old friends, reconnecting. I went through my box of memories, which I keep, old photos, letters. I did a lot of quiet contemplation to try to pull up the elements and the stories. But I wanted to be honest, so I wanted to verify all of that. It was really important. Then find your scenes. A life is best, in my opinion, for my story, a life is best understood from the small stories within the bigger story. You know, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. You may never finish it, but you know, it's probably the best way to do it. So I wanted to find those small stories that took you through my life. Find your rhythm. A lot of memoirs that deal with sadness and sad events sometimes never waver from the sad events. And I think there's always joy, even in the pain. There's always humor in the pain. There really is. Find that, share that. And if you do write a hard scene or you relive through a hard scene, be kind with yourself. Take a break. Be gentle. The biggest one for me, and all of you obviously are readers and probably authors, you know this one, show, don't tell. I cannot tell you how many memoirs I've read where I was stuck in their head for a good portion of the memoir. And I still love the memoir, but I felt like, you're telling me all you're thinking, but you're not showing me your life. Show me your life. So even though when you're recounting the events of your life, you do need to express how you thought about something, try to find a way to show that as opposed to tell it. That for me was the key for unlocking my creative stream as I shared the different stories. Let your first draft be brutally honest, and then edit for kindness to yourself and to the other people in your life. We're all just trying to get through, right? I believe all books are memoir, and that they all tell a story of people or persons going through events that lead to some sort of a change. So for me, every book is a memoir of a sort. With that in mind, remember that people like a story that excites them, motivates them, makes them think, and makes them feel. So if your life contains those elements, and every single person in here does, and you want to write it, get to write it. So, my story has been written, well, not quite. If you're familiar with the hero journey theme of writing, every story is broken into multiple elements of a hero journey, the hero being the protagonist of the story, and where they start from here and they end up here. There's one part known as a return. And the return is a stage where it signifies the hero's completion of their journey. And they always go back to where they started. They go, I am a new person. I am changed. I am complete. Allow me to share the results of my journey. So the hero comes full circle, so to speak. And by hero, I don't mean somebody who's necessarily heroic. Hero of the story is just the person who we're reading about. So, Frodo went back to the Shire. Luke Skywalker went back to Tatooine. Jane Eyre returned to Rochester. Dorothy and Toto went back to Kansas. Me? I went back to the library. This is the part that kills me. Perhaps it's fitting that a boy who once hid in the library can now be found on its shelves. You know, no matter how many copies it sells, and it's been doing really well, not gonna lie. I think it's number 4 on the bestsellers list today. 5. Is it 4 or 5?
The category.
No, I know that, but it's bestsellers list
4.
within a category, yeah. Which is shocking to me that that many people want to actually read about me. Sometimes I think it's accidental. They think it's something else. Imposter syndrome, probably. No matter how many reviews and accolades my book receives, no matter how many pat in the backs, this night celebrating local authors made it all worth it. And speaking of the return, last year, Amy and I made a trip back to where the events of my life occurred. Visited my old home on Chestnut Street, if you're familiar with the book. An abandoned mansion where I first found courage, which is a really interesting chapter. The streets where I wore all the rubber off the tires of my Stingray bike. Of course, I wanted to visit the Bucks County Free Library. I love how they put the word free in the title. But years ago, I moved to a different location. The old library is now a church. Not surprising to me, because it's always been one. I've been asked, well, I'll be writing a sequel that documents my recovery. If you've read the book, you realize that I zip it up pretty quickly at the end. It's like one chapter, but everything's great. Kind of documenting my reconstruction from all the pieces. I know that I have a lot to offer in that process that hasn't really been said before. There's so much literature about recovery and putting down the bad and looking for the good. And for me, there was no magic method, as it were, of recovery and rebuild. No Hallmark card sentiment, no self-help seminar, no 10-step process that I went through. And there's nothing wrong with all of that. It works for many people and good. But for me, I broke it down into bites, like sentences, paragraphs, chapters. I chose the next small thing over and over until it added up to a life worth living. Whew. Perhaps now that my life can be found in the shelves of story, my life can be found in the shelves of story, some child somewhere going through it will come to this temple, walk these holy aisles, and for whatever reason, their fingers are going to touch my book, and they'll read it, and it will help. With that, I'd love to answer any questions if you have any.
You have one.
Please.
Do you ever consider mentoring anyone that has gone through similar things that you've gone through?
To date, no, but I absolutely would love to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I might talk to you.
Please.
My husband has some similarities.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think he should have came tonight, but I'll definitely have him read the book.
Please. That would be lovely. No, I'm looking for ways to give back. My writing this memoir was the first step. This was the door crack for me. I've always been involved with charities from afar. I support with tangible assets where I can, but I haven't been deeply involved directly with people that could benefit from that, and it's time. It's part of my Frodo return home. Please.
Do you have a relationship with your immediate family, or your mother, or siblings?
Good question. So my mother is a devout Jehovah's Witness, as is my brother. And what most folks know from Jehovah's Witnesses is the people that knock on your door on a Sunday and offer you a watchtower and a wake. Or now they move what's called cart preaching, where they'll set up a cart, you walk past, they'll go to see if you're interested in their version of religion, their version of faith. The unfortunate part of the Jehovah's Witnesses is if you don't believe what they believe, even if you're a family member, you are not allowed to be spoken to. So, with that being said, I did reconnect with my mother after the homelessness situation and the many, many years of my own individual life prior to my first marriage. Well, my only marriage. I was married twice. Sorry, just one, I promise. And she did attend my wedding, and we did speak. The challenge with folks who are in a high control religious group is that it takes about 20 minutes before they begin to try to proselytize and convert you. And then you're left with, no thank you. So if you don't accept their proselytizing, they tend to cut you off. So there's a bit of a strained relationship, but specifically to answer your question, I do have a, albeit broken, but there is a relationship with my mother. My brother, who is kind of high up within the Jehovah's Witnesses organization, won't speak to me because he's very hardliner within his belief of the religion. If you don't believe, you are full of demons. Which I freely said, I am full of demons, but not the kind of you think, Sean. I mean, so thank you for the question, but it's an ongoing thing. You only have one blood family, but the great thing is you have all the family you want if you want to build it from the people around you. Please.
When you talked about your writing process and your desire to fact check as much as possible, which I appreciate given some other memoir scandals in the past.
Oh yeah, for sure.
How do you reconcile like the people that tell you you remember it wrong or it didn't happen, and at some point you have to go with your own lived experience? So like, was that like traumatic for you, or were you just like, hey, I called, I gave it my best shot, I'm still gonna go with.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me give you two scenarios,
Okay.
because I can think of two different things that occurred. One, if you've read the book, and some folks have, there's an experience where I was a virgin until I was very late in life. I was 19. I mean, I don't know if that's late or not. That's how I was. And I remembered my very first experience a very specific way. But I thought, there's no way that could have been true. Like, I doubted my own recollection of the event. So through Facebook, the universal connector, I found that person and I called them, and we spent about an hour on the phone and surprisingly verified every detail. So that's on the positive side of verification. I was kind of shocked I remembered it correctly. There was another event that occurred around, shall we say, shooting in the novel. And I remembered a very specific way, which I didn't remember that me taking an active role or as active. And I came across a mutual friend who agreed to call someone in prison and verify some details, third party, because I needed to keep distance. And they completely gave me a different version. Interestingly enough, I sat with that version for about a week and a half, and my memory began to come through with some details that I had previously probably omitted. So in the first one, I was verified. The second, I was corrected. And the correction, while not being my exact memory, made more logistical sense to how the actual event went down. By the way, I didn't share some of those details because there is real danger in some of the life that I've lived. For sure. Elaine's nodding her head. Good thing is, most of the danger has been long past or long committed, so we're good. Good questions, though. Thank you. I didn't come up with a scenario that I can reconcile, though. And a very unfortunate part of my story, if you've read the book, is my very best friend, my brother from another mother, my soulmate, Sydney, unfortunately had a terrible health emergency, which led him to a place where we couldn't verify story. So I had a lot of conversations with his wife, and he had shared a lot with her, and we reviewed a lot of the elements in the book to verify. So it's my best effort at complete accuracy. They say that there's three versions to every story. There's your version, their version, and the truth that falls somewhere in the middle, and I really tried for the version in the middle. I think I did a fair balance. If there's anything that's not accurate, it's minor. Good question, thank you.
When you read the section about being with Bobo and out on the highway,
Yeah,
how old were you then? I forget.
sure, I was about 18 and a few months. That was very early on. Between 18 and 19, I can't nail it exactly, but that was early on. Because when I was first thrown out of the house, I stayed at my friend Sydney's for a few weeks. My mother found out and said that religion doesn't want you staying with them either. Called her, his mother, had me thrown out. I stayed with another friend, and I actually hit the street hardcore, meaning I did not have a bed. I was on the street, And during that first experience, that's when I met Boo-Boo at a laundromat, because I was washing my few clothes. Because no matter where I lived, I was fastidious about my appearance. I was really vain as a young man. So I'm like, my clothes are going to be ironed, they're going to be buttoned up even if I don't have a house, and I'm going to go to the laundromat and make sure they're regularly clean. I'm not going to be dirty. I'm like, no, I don't want to look that way. So I met Boo-Boo, and Boo-Boo showed me the ropes, as it were. And the whole time he's showing me the ropes, I'm like, this isn't going to be me for long, though. This isn't the last couple months, maybe a week, 2 weeks. You can't conceive. And I'm probably going to say something that may not be popular at this particular time in our society, but I was a white male. White males weren't homeless, right? That was the psyche, still is probably. So in my whitewashed brain, I'm like, I'll be out of this in no time. But see, the street doesn't care what color you are, it only cares what money you have. Please.
Through this whole process, did you have any psychiatric help or psychological help?
No. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in psychiatrists per se. I mean, there's probably some evidence of that occurring, but by and large, they believe that the Bible has every answer you're ever going to need. So no matter what you're experiencing, crack your Bible, even though it was written 2,000 years ago. It may not perfectly apply today. Crack your Bible and you'll find your answer. Having read the Bible many, many times and studied it for 2 hours, 3 times a week, I can tell you that it wasn't there. The solution wasn't in it for me. And psychology and psychiatrists and mental health, at least at the time, required resources and money. And I didn't have that. I was just looking for a way to survive. But with all that being said, the library has a lot of books on it. And I read a lot of books. And I went to philosophy. That was my reading. I thought philosophy will help me understand my life and my place in the universe, and it did. So even though it didn't fix me, it put me on the path to recovery. Thank you. Any other questions?
Do you have any happy memories of childhood?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. My childhood was full of joys as well as pains. You know, in between the screaming matches until 3 in the morning was the sledding down the hills of Bolton Mansion with my mother and my father, and collecting leaves in the fall, and Christmases and Easters. Yeah, of course. Yeah, my life is not just pain, for sure. Please.
So you said you always wanted to have a put-together outward appearance.
Yeah.
And going to a laundromat costs money. How did you get the money?
Yeah, good question. So even though I was homeless, I had a job.
Oh.
Yeah, which is interesting because most homeless folks today have jobs. They just don't have enough money to be able to get a place. So it was always a battle between what do I use my resources for. It cost $2.25 to do the wash and the laundry for me, and that was something I would never give up, right? So that was part of my spend. And I worked all different types of jobs in that time, but a lot of it was like a retail employee. In fact, I became a salesperson at an import-export store called World Bazaar. And they hired me, I lied about where I lived, right? I was on the street. And the great thing was eventually they gave me a key. So I started sleeping in the store. When the mall closed at 9:30, I went in the back and slept on, remember those big Papasan chairs with the big cushions? Yeah, I took 3 or 4 of those, threw it out in the back room, and had the best sleep in the world. So I slept in their retail store, and they never discovered that.
They didn't have surveillance cameras?
Not then, not at the time.
What year are we talking about?
Sure, so let's see. I was 18 in 1980, so that occurred in 1980. So most of the events in the memoir occur from 1980 to 1988. Now there are some that post that, but that's the main gist of it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really glad they didn't have. Yeah. And actually, I had one of the other employees discovered that I was sleeping there through an odd circumstance and reported me to the district manager, which I denied. I'm like, no, I never did that. So then I stopped sleeping in the store and slept in the warehouse for a while. Flashing that forward, when I started working in nightclubs initially, that was perfect because I would DJ until 3 in the morning, turn off all the lights in the DJ booth and duck down and lay down and I'd sleep in there until 6 or 7 in the morning, get up and then leave. So, because I didn't want to be in the street, you know, because that to me was, how do you come back from that? But I did, not that much, but I did street. I lived in the woods for a couple months. Yeah. And I can tell you that as a homeless child, a blue tarp was my best friend. You can do a lot of things with a blue tarp. You can put it over you to stop the rain, put it under you to stop the moisture, you can put it over your possessions to keep them dry, you can hide under it. The blue tarp is like, I was thinking about writing a sequel, Blue Tarp. I don't
Not a bad idea.
No, good question, so thank you. Anything else?
Did you
Please.
continue your education after the
Post.
age of 18?
So, depends on how you define education. Formally, I did some smatterings of college for sure. When I started working in the nightclub business and the money was just rolling in by the handful, then yes, I said, let me go and do some college. And I did some non-matriculated classes for sure. But I found that, you know, and I'm sorry to name these numbers, but it's important to the context. In 1980, I was making $150,000 cash in the nightclub. So I was overwhelmed with money at the time. So what job could potentially even pay for that? So my education became what I wanted to learn, not what the world needed me to learn for another vocation. retrospect, we all have our things we regret. Should I have, could I have gone back to college and try to attempt some sort of a degree? Sure. But interestingly enough, and something that's in the book, I quit high school. I did not finish high school. I have no degree, but I did later on get my GED. But the interesting thing is, to date, I am an engineer. And the idea of an engineer not having a college degree or not even having their high school degree is something I had to keep really quiet. So it's been a really interesting life along the professional lines, so to speak. Good question. Yes,
And
Amy?
everyone will be signing something on the way out the door, so that's not disclosed.
Yeah, non-disclosures, right? At this point, please. Excellent. Well, thank you. If you allow me, I have one last piece I'd like to leave you with. I wrote this for tonight, and I'm going to blubber through this, I guarantee you. So, I wrote this for this evening, and I hope you like it. It's called The Library. The tissues are down there. The first time I hid in the library, it wasn't hiding so much as pausing. The air tasted like paper and winter coats. Behind the desk of the librarian, with a pencil behind her ear, stamped dates that left forward like promises. She saw me without looking up. She had that special awareness. Most of you do. I learned the aisles by smell, the sweet dust of biographies, the sharper tang of new hardcovers, the whisper of soft paperbacks that felt like they might forgive me for everything. The demon talk at home, tongues, visions, threats dangling in the suburban air couldn't follow me past the spinning rack of mysteries or the rows of science fiction. Here, I was king. Or astronaut, I warned you, or cowboy, or explorer. Now, I didn't know the word sanctuary, but I knew the feeling. Shoulders dropping an inch, breath traveling further than my chest. Kind of quiet that didn't accuse me of making it. In the children's reading room, a poster of a cat said, "Hang in there," and I wanted to tell it, I'm trying, really trying. See, books taught me the choreography of escape. How you can leave without leaving. I traveled by index and epigraph, by sentences that opened like windows. When I checked out a stack, the librarian asked if I could carry all of that. "I'll figure it out," I said. I meant much more than the weight. On the days when everything cracked, and there were many, voices raised, prophecy thrown like knives, I rode my Stingray as fast as I could to the library, took the furthest chair, one tucked beneath reference. You see, the librarian didn't ask questions. She slid a glass of water across the desk like a secret. "You're safe here," lived in the air between us. I learned the systems. Dewey decimals like coordinates and directions out of a burning town. Sliding index drawers chock full of treasure maps to nuggets of silver and gold. All this and more. And somehow it was free. You see, despite what Holmes said, I was a person who could return a book on time, who never creased corners, never wrote into borders, who could be trusted with an official laminated card. When Holmes said unworthy, the library said renewed. Thank you.